My wife was jealous of my daughter, so she made a meticulous plan to remove her from our family. When I found out, I went nuclear and took everything from her, including her future. When I married Rebecca 5 years ago, I was over the moon. I'd been a single dad for 3 years after losing my wife in a car wreck. Those years were hard, brutal even. My daughter Mia was 10, and she just shut down emotionally. My son Jake was only 5, and didn't understand what was happening. So when Rebecca came along with her big smile, calm voice, and what felt like endless patience, I genuinely thought we'd all gotten a miracle. She baked, decorated the house with little touches that made it feel warm. The kids liked her enough in the beginning. My son Jake was young and easily won over. My daughter Mia, who was 12 at the time, took longer to come around, but she was polite and made the effort. I was so proud of us. But then things shifted in ways that I didn't notice. At dinner, Rebecca would say things to Mia like, "Maybe skip the potatoes tonight, sweetie. You've been saying you want to fit into that dress for the recital." Always with a smile, always sounding helpful. Mia would go quiet. I'd give her a confused look like, is she overreacting? But I never said anything to Rebecca. I just told myself it was normal parenting. When Mia brought home a certificate for academic excellence, Rebecca congratulated her, but barely. That same week, Jake got a sticker for best helper in kindergarten, and Rebecca baked a cake for him. Mia rolled her eyes and I thought she was being petty. I didn't see it yet. I just didn't see it. A few months in, Rebecca cleaned up Mia's room while she was at school. She threw out boxes of stuff that belonged to Mia's mom. Old notes, scarves, birthday cards. She said they were moldy and smelled bad. Mia was quiet when she saw the room. I asked if she was okay, and she nodded. But later, I saw her sitting on the porch, hugging an old picture frame that Rebecca must have missed. Her shoulders were shaking. I didn't go out there. I thought she needed space. Things got worse when Rebecca started policing Mia's phone. She'd check her messages, delete apps, and say it was for her safety. Mia said it wasn't fair that Jake could do whatever he wanted. Rebecca told her boys were different. Every time I tried to talk to Mia alone, Rebecca would show up and interrupt, or change the subject, or start a new conversation that pulled my attention. It was so subtle I didn't catch it in real time. Mia started getting quieter. Her grades slipped. Her friends stopped coming around. Rebecca said she was acting out and had an attitude. She even told a few other moms that Mia was experimenting with substances. I heard that secondhand and didn't believe it. But I didn't confront Rebecca either. I was exhausted, working full-time, trying to hold this new family together. I thought maybe it was just hard for Mia to accept someone new. We tried therapy, or at least, I thought we did. Rebecca turned on the waterworks the second we got in there. She told the therapist how hard she tried and how Mia shut her out. Mia just looked down at her lap and shrugged. Afterward, Rebecca said, "You saw how she treats me. What more can I do?" I didn't have an answer. Then came the night everything snapped. Mia had a panic attack. I found her on the floor gasping, face pale, hands shaking. Rebecca rushed in and said, "We need to get her evaluated. She's not well." I held Mia while she sobbed and begged me not to send her away. Rebecca said, "She's manipulating you. She needs help." She showed me screenshots of texts she found on Mia's phone, stuff about pills and wanting to disappear. My stomach turned. I didn't want to believe it, but she had the evidence, and she was calm, while Mia screamed and shook and cried that the screenshots were fake. I agreed to let the hospital evaluate her. I told myself it was the right thing. The house felt empty after. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how fast everything had escalated, about how tired Mia looked, how thin, how sad. I went to Rebecca's tablet to look for a grocery list. Her journal app popped up. I opened it without thinking. She had written everything, every plan, every lie. She wrote about making Mia look unstable, about deleting messages, about how removing the girl would fix the family. She even mentioned faking screenshots and making calls to other parents. It was all there, cold and meticulous. I felt like throwing up. When I confronted her, she denied it at first. Then she froze. Tears came out of nowhere. She said she was tired of living in my wife's shadow, that Mia never saw her as a mother, that she couldn't stand being second place. I didn't yell. I just stared at her and asked how she could do that to a child. She didn't answer. I didn't know what else to say. I told her to pack her things and get out of my house. She laughed at me, actually laughed, and said, "You can't just throw me out. We're married. This is my home too. Besides, who do you think everyone will believe? The grieving widow who's clearly having a mental breakdown, or the caring stepmother who's been holding this family together?" That's when I remembered Mia. I ran upstairs to check on her, terrified of what Dakota might have done while I was sleeping. Thank God she was there, curled up in her bed. I woke her gently and told her we needed to leave right away. She looked confused but didn't ask questions, just grabbed her phone and a hoodie. I woke Jake too, telling him we were having a surprise breakfast out. Dakota followed us downstairs, still in her robe, demanding to know where we were going. I ignored her and ushered the kids into the car. As we backed out of the driveway, I saw her standing in the doorway, her face a mask of rage. That image still haunts me. I drove straight to my sister Barbara's house. It was barely 7 a.m. when we showed up at her door. Barbara took one look at my face and let us in without questions. Once the kids were settled with cereal in front of the TV, I showed her the printouts of Dakota's journal. Barbara read through them, her expression growing darker with each page. "Holy shit," she whispered. I always thought something was off about her, but this is psychotic. I told her I needed a safe place for the kids while I figured out what to do. Barbara immediately offered her guest room and pull-out couch. Stay as long as you need, all of you. That morning was a blur of phone calls. First to my boss, explaining I had a family emergency, then to a lawyer a friend had used for his divorce. The lawyer, Quinn, agreed to see me immediately when I explained the situation. I left the kids with Barbara and drove to Quinn's office. She reviewed the journal printouts and listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, she looked at me seriously. This is extremely concerning behavior. What Dakota has done constitutes emotional abuse of a minor. We need to act quickly to protect your children legally. She explained we needed to file for an emergency custody order and possibly a restraining order. She also strongly advised against returning to the house alone. People who engage in this level of manipulation can become dangerous when exposed. Take someone with you, preferably a police officer, if you need to get your belongings. I asked about the psychiatric evaluation that had been scheduled for Mia the next day. Quinn advised canceling it and instead having Mia see an independent therapist of our choosing who could properly evaluate her without Dakota's influence. We'll explain to the new therapist exactly what's been happening. Their assessment will help counter any claims Dakota might make about Mia's mental health. On my way back to Barbara's, my phone exploded with texts and calls from Dakota. I didn't answer but saw the notifications. Where are you with my children? You're making a huge mistake. I can explain everything if you just come home. Those journal entries aren't what you think. When I got back to Barbara's, I found Mia sitting alone in the guest room. She looked so small and vulnerable. I sat down next to her and asked how she was feeling. Are we really not going back? She asked quietly. No, sweetheart, we're not. I found out some things about Dakota that show she hasn't been honest with us. Mia didn't look surprised. She hates me, Dad. She's always hated me. That simple statement broke something in me. I pulled Mia into a hug and apologized over and over for not seeing what was happening, for not protecting her, for bringing Dakota into our lives. Mia cried against my shoulder, deep, racking sobs that seemed to come from years of held-back tears. When she calmed down, she started telling me things. So many things that Dakota had said and done when I wasn't around. Comments about her weight, throwing away her clothes that didn't fit right, telling her that her dancing was not as special as she thought, restricting her phone and internet access, while claiming to me that Mia was the one isolating herself. She told me you and Jake were happier when I wasn't around, Mia whispered. She said I reminded you of Mom, and it made you sad, so I should stay in my room more. Every word was like a knife. How had I missed this? How had I let this woman poison my daughter's life for so long? Jake was confused about the whole situation. He kept asking when we were going home and why Dakota wasn't with us. I tried to explain in terms an 8-year-old could understand that Dakota had done some unkind things and wasn't being honest, so we needed some time away from her. He seemed to accept this, but I knew there would be more difficult conversations ahead. That afternoon, I contacted the psychiatric facility and canceled Mia's evaluation. The intake coordinator sounded concerned and asked if Mia was getting help elsewhere. I explained we were consulting with another therapist and thanked her for understanding. Then I called our family doctor and scheduled appointments for both kids. I wanted a medical professional to document their current physical and emotional state. The doctor could only see us the following week, but she promised to note in their files that the appointments were requested as part of an ongoing family situation. Dakota didn't give up easily. She showed up at Barbara's house that evening, pounding on the door and demanding to see the kids. Barbara called the police while I kept Mia and Jake in the back bedroom. By the time officers arrived, Dakota had composed herself and was calmly explaining that her husband had taken the children without her knowledge, and she was worried. The officers asked to speak with me. I showed them the journal printouts and explained the situation. They seemed skeptical at first. Dakota presented so well, so normal, but agreed to file a report documenting the incident. They couldn't force her to leave since she was on public property, but they did advise her that causing a disturbance could result in her arrest. Dakota left, but not before looking directly at our bedroom window and mouthing something I couldn't make out. The sight sent chills down my spine. That night, none of us slept well. Jake had nightmares and ended up in bed with me. Mia stayed awake, scrolling through her phone until I gently took it away around 2 a.m. She might be messaging you, I explained. We need to be careful. The next morning, Barbara went with me to the house to collect essential items for the kids and myself. I half expected Dakota to be there, but the house was empty. It looked different somehow, colder, less like the home I remembered. I quickly packed clothes, school supplies, medications, and a few treasured possessions, including the remaining photos of Mary I could find. In Mia's room, I noticed empty spaces on her shelves where I knew she'd kept mementos of her mother. Below her bed, I found torn photos and a broken picture frame. The sight made me physically sick. Dakota hadn't just hidden these things, she'd destroyed them. When we returned to Barbara's, I had an email from Quinn outlining our legal strategy. She'd filed for an emergency custody hearing and was preparing documentation for a restraining order. She explained that Dakota, as my spouse and the children's stepmother, did have certain legal rights we needed to address properly. The journal is compelling evidence, she wrote, but be prepared for Dakota to claim it was fictional writing, therapy journaling, or even that you fabricated it. She advised collecting any other evidence of Dakota's behavior, text messages, emails, social media posts, witness statements from teachers or friends friends who had observed changes in Mia. She also suggested I check our financial accounts immediately. That was a smart call. When I logged into our joint bank account, I discovered Dakota had transferred nearly $15,000 to her personal account that morning. I called the bank in a panic, but they explained that as a joint account holder, she had every right to move that money. Another painful lesson in how vulnerable I'd made myself and my children. I texted Dakota about the money. Her response was chilling. Consider it payment for babysitting your troubled kids for the past year. You'll need that money for Mia's therapy anyway. I forwarded the text to Quinn, who added it to our growing file of evidence. Later that day, Mia's school counselor called. Dakota had contacted the school claiming there was a family misunderstanding and that Mia would be returning home that afternoon. Thankfully, the counselor had the presence of mind to contact me directly to confirm. I explained that Dakota was no longer authorized to make decisions for Mia and promised to provide legal documentation as soon as possible. This prompted a call to Jake's elementary school as well. I spoke with his principal, giving only the barest details, that we were separated from Dakota and that she should not be allowed to pick him up or make decisions about his schooling. The principal was understanding but firm about needing proper documentation. 3 days after discovering the journal, we had our emergency custody hearing. Quinn had prepared me for what to expect, but nothing could have readied me for seeing Dakota in the courtroom. Dressed conservatively, her expression a perfect blend of confusion and concern. Her attorney portrayed her as a loving stepmother, blindsided by her husband's erratic behavior. They suggested I was having some kind of delayed grief reaction and had become paranoid. The journal, they argued, was a creative writing exercise Dakota had done as part of her own grief counseling, imagining worst-case scenarios to work through her anxieties about blending our family. It was so convincing that even I started questioning myself for a moment. Was I overreacting? Was there an innocent explanation I hadn't considered? Then Mia was called to speak with the judge privately in chambers. I don't know exactly what she said, but when they returned, the judge's demeanor toward Dakota had noticeably cooled. He granted me temporary full custody of both children and issued a temporary restraining order preventing Dakota from contacting us or coming within 100 feet of our home, the kids' schools, or Barbara's house. The court takes allegations of psychological abuse very seriously, he stated. Until a full investigation can be conducted, the priority must be the children's safety and well-being. Dakota showed no reaction to the ruling, no outrage, no tears, nothing. That controlled blankness was somehow more frightening than any outburst would have been. Outside the courthouse, she brushed past me and whispered, "This isn't over. They always believe the children at first, but then the truth comes out. Enjoy your victory while it lasts." The next few weeks were a strange mix of relief and constant anxiety. We stayed with Barbara while looking for a new place to live. I couldn't imagine returning to the house I'd shared with Dakota, where so much damage had been done to my family. Besides, I'd learned Dakota was still living there and refusing to leave. Mia started seeing a new therapist, Dr. Morgan, who specialized in trauma and emotional abuse. After just 2 sessions, Dr. Morgan requested to speak with me privately. Mia has described a textbook case of parental alienation and psychological abuse, she explained. Dakota systematically undermined Mia's self-worth, isolated her from support systems, and attempted to destroy her relationship with you. The fact that she targeted mementos of Mia's mother is particularly concerning. She was literally trying to erase Mia's connection to her past. Dr. Morgan recommended keeping Mia's therapy sessions frequent while we navigated the legal process. She also suggested finding a separate therapist for Jake, who was struggling in his own way. Unlike Mia, Jake had been Dakota's favorite, the child she used to demonstrate what a wonderful mother she could be. He was confused and hurt by the sudden changes in his life, and sometimes asked when he could see Dakota again. This created tension between the siblings. Mia couldn't understand why Jake would want to see someone who had hurt her so badly. Jake didn't fully grasp what Dakota had done wrong. They argued frequently, with Jake accusing Mia of making up stories, and Mia calling Jake Dakota's little puppet. I tried my best to mediate these conflicts while dealing with the ongoing legal battle. Dakota had countersued for custody, claiming I was alienating the children from her, and that Mia had pre-existing mental health issues I was neglecting. Her attorney submitted evidence, social media posts, where Mia had expressed typical teenage angst, school records showing her declining grades, which had begun after Dakota moved in, and statements from Dakota's friends who claimed to have witnessed Mia being disrespectful and troubled. The most disturbing submission was a psychological analysis from a therapist who had never actually met Mia. This person, based solely on Dakota's descriptions, suggested Mia might have borderline personality disorder or be experiencing psychosis. Quinn was able to get this thrown out, but the mere existence of such a document showed how far Dakota was willing to go. Throughout all this, Dakota maintained a public image of the heartbroken stepmother. She posted frequently on social media about missing her kids and praying for healing for our broken family. She joined support groups for alienated parents and shared articles about false accusations in divorce cases. Some of our mutual friends believed her narrative. I received messages asking why I was being so harsh, suggesting we try marriage counseling, insisting Dakota deserved a chance to explain herself. Some even suggested Mia might be lying or exaggerating for attention. I cut those people out of our lives immediately. One unexpected bright spot came when Jake's teacher, Mrs. Reese, contacted me. She had noticed changes in Jake's behavior over the past year, increased anxiety, seeking constant approval, becoming upset over small mistakes, and had attempted to discuss her concerns with Dakota during parent-teacher conferences. Dakota had dismissed her observations and suggested Mrs. Reese was picking on Jake. Mrs. Reese offered to provide a statement about these interactions for our court case. Her professional observations of Jake's behavioral changes and Dakota's dismissive response provided valuable third-party evidence of the negative impact Dakota had on our family. About a month after we left, we moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, just a 3-bedroom unit in a decent complex, but it was ours, and Dakota had never set foot in it. The kids decorated their rooms however they wanted. Mia covered her walls with dance posters and photos of her friends. Jake chose a space theme with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I hung photos of Mary in the living room and in each of the kids' rooms. I wanted them to know their mother was still part of our family, that her memory would never